Hey everyone, Zirin here. So here's a topic some of you might not have expected. Let's talk about books! Specifically light novels and even web novels while I'm at it. Alright, before we get any further, let me just... Hopefully this alleviates any incoming problems. Anyways, it might seem entirely out of place for me to be talking about Japanese games that suddenly go BAM! Light novels, but when you realize that I do enjoy playing visual novels, it suddenly seems like much more of a natural fit. As a heads up, every single show you will see in the background here was originally based on a light novel or web novel. To start off, I suppose I should go over what actually is a light novel for those who don't know. Light novels are essentially young adult Japanese anime novels. They are termed light novels because they're usually shorter in length than, say, a regular novel, and have a few illustrations spread throughout the book. Most of these books have a very anime-esque aesthetic to their illustrations, and some are actually adapted into various other mediums after receiving enough popular attention. Just like how plenty of famous animes are adapted from manga, light novels also get a very similar attention. Plenty of the biggest animes out there like Sword Art Online, Haruhi Suzumiya, and No Game No Life all started with the original source material as light novels. Especially in present times, light novels have kind of exploded quite a bit in popularity, probably due to Sword Art Online's ridiculous success. So many light novels are constantly being adapted to anime nowadays, such as The Devil's a Part-Timer, Do You Love Your Mom and Her 2-Hit Multi-Target Attacks, Overlord, Konosuba, I Wanna Eat Your Pancreas, and a million and billions of isekais out there. I like to think of light novels as a very natural progression curve for any fan of Japanese media. You start out by watching Saturday morning cartoons on television like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, all that good stuff. You learn that this is a popular form of animation from Japan known as anime, so you get into that with Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. Then you learn that these anime you love are actually adapted from picture books with text known as manga, which itself has material not present in anime, so you start checking those out. And then you learn that some of these mangas and animes are adapted from books known as light novels, which again have material not present in either one of those mediums, and at that point you say, screw it, learn Japanese, and just start straight up reading full-on Japanese novels. Jokes aside, I think you kinda get my point here. Every single one of these mediums have their own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to presenting their story, and it's tough to say whether some of them are necessarily better than the other, because it all depends on which story is being adapted and how. Also, most of these visual novel and light novel anime adaptations have the parent budget of a lemonade stand, and not even a well-performing one at that. While I said that light novels were essentially young adult novels, that distinction blurs entirely depending on the author of the light novel and the magazine that novel is being serialized in. The age range can vary from more shonen light novels which are directed towards a younger male audience, shoujo light novels which are directed towards a younger female audience, seinen for older male, josei for older female, and if all of these terms sound exceedingly familiar, that is because it is the same terminology used in anime and manga. It all depends again on whatever the author decides to make the subject matter, with the only connecting theme really being the generally shorter length and the anime aesthetic, and even that can sometimes be not necessarily true. I mean, there are even light novels that are essentially the equivalent of complete smut, and even adult materials like the Harem series and so on. I suppose while I'm on a similar topic, I also quickly run over web novels since most people probably think of these two interchangeably, and for good reason. Web novels are essentially works of fiction that any random person on the internet puts up for free on websites that anyone can access. So think of those fanfiction websites, except you only filter by the original works only. Many aspiring Japanese writers post on websites dedicated to this, like Shosetsuka or Alpha Polis, and so on. Whenever any of these works get enough traction or popularity due to people reading it online, that is usually when a writer might approach a publishing company, or vice versa, and make an offer to publish these stories into light novels, where these passion projects are actually given some hard editing, illustrations, and usually additional material not present in the original web novel, all the way to drastic changes depending on the story. A quick example, for instance, the original ending to Tate no Yusha, or Rising of the Shield Hero, was changed from the web novel for the light novel version due to a general dislike for the original ending. Plenty of incredibly popular current anime originally started as web novels on Seosetsu, with the full title website being Shousetsuka ni Naro, which roughly translates to Let's Become a Novelist. And by anime series, again, I mean like Tate no Yusha, That Time I Reincarnated as a Slime, Mushoku Tensei, ReZero, My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, you know, there's a bunch. Web novels also stretch beyond just Japan, as there are plenty of famous Chinese, Korean, and probably every language under the sun. I myself have enjoyed several wuxia ones, xuanxia ones, King's Avatar, Dolu Dalao as example from Chinese ones, some Korean ones like Second Coming of Gluttony, Dungeon Events, Solo Leveling, just to name a few. It does make sense though, when a publisher sees that a story is already getting incredibly popular on the web, why not make an adaptation and capitalize on that popularity? That's also why some people's impression of light novels might be a little skewed, as people on websites like Shousetsuka Ninaro sees that all these isekai type of stories are what gets the bigger hits, leading to more people creating isekai stories. There are of course still plenty of stories that aren't isekai constantly being put on that website every day, but there are a lot of isekais. So now that we have a pretty solid idea of what a light novel is, let's talk about why exactly I enjoy light novels themselves. One of my favorite aspects of a light novel is just how much story is present in each volume. Both anime and manga usually are waiting for a week-by-week release. For anime, it's one episode. For manga, it's about one chapter. Anime tends to have more filler or stock shots in order to prolong the adaptation length. It's also quite possible for fights in a show to span over multiple episodes, and that feels pretty rough when over the course of 4 weeks, they still haven't finished a single fight. I could also never find myself able to keep up with the one chapter per week schedule release for most mangas, which exists because of how mangas are usually serialized in magazines, and only later are compiled into tankobons, or the manga volumes we know and love. With light novels on the other hand, every single volume usually comprises a complete story arc, or at the very most, usually a part 1 of a story arc with the next volume being part 2. Granted, we're talking about light novels here. If we're talking about web novels, then we don't even get a stable schedule, and it's just whenever the author feels like it until they eventually burn out. But hey, that's why we're talking about light novels right now. This might resonate with some of you, but I was always the type of anime watcher who would wait for a full season or arc to come out before I binged the series, just because I could never handle waiting weeks for one fight to end. In that sense, light novels are much more up my alley, because I could usually expect a decently satisfying story arc by the end of the volume. Aside from the completeness of each volume, what I also enjoy about light novels is how easy it is to just pick up and read it. I suspect this is very similar to why people drift from anime to manga, since compared to sitting down and watching a 23-minute spectacle, it's far faster and more streamlined to flip through a manga chapter. Light novels take this idea even further, where I can easily store a ton of light novels on my phone to take around and read anytime I want, as opposed to say a manga, which would take up a ton more space on my phone. Probably not a problem for most people, but in my daily life when I'm out about, I spend plenty of time with limited to no internet, so light novels come in pretty clutch there. It's also a lot more inconspicuous to be reading light novels on your phone in, say, a train than a manga. Finally, as for the biggest reason I still continue to enjoy light novels to this day, would probably just be the depth of the material presented in light novels. Again, I imagine this is probably quite similar to why plenty of people enjoy manga. How, oh, you watched the anime version? Well, the manga version has more material not present in the anime. And just like that, light novels have some material not present in their manga adaptations either. I'd like to stress again that this isn't because one medium is inherently better than another, but rather, anytime a story is adapted, the people working on that adaptation have to change things in order to better suit the type of audience they're going for. An anime needs to show a satisfying episode in 23 minutes, so they're gonna skip anything that might bog down the action on screen or might be seen as pointless. Even if it's a big brain talking scene, they're not gonna copy every single thing one-to-one from the original source material. Imagine if the Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works adaptation did that. At that point, you might as well make an audiobook. Mangas also have a finite amount of page space for every single chapter, so of course they're gonna have to streamline some parts to make for a better reading experience. Light novels, on the other hand, have quite a bit more room as they are working with purely pages and pages of written word. Granted, they definitely still have limits, obviously, but because the audience for a light novel is predisposed to settling in for a read, the author has a bit more time to explain the details and add bits here and there. Plenty of things that probably would need to be cut in other formats can be shown in light novels in full force, for better and for worse. For instance, in light novels, there's usually a lot more time dedicated to the main character's thought process behind their actions and opinions of other characters. Another big one that stands out is the inclusion of things like the perspective of other characters and how they view the situations that happen, which I enjoy incredibly. I think it's really fascinating to read that and is one of my favorite parts in these light novels. Cut content can also just straight up include host scenes as well. Understandably, plenty of these aspects are usually the first thing on the chopping block since it's harder to fit it in a more constrained space that authors have to work with in other mediums. In addition, most of the time an anime or manga adaptation of a light novel will only cover material present in early volumes, so unless that show becomes so insanely popular so as to warrant future seasons, the only way to find out what happens next is to read the light novel. This happens more often than not, since many times an adaptation might just serve as an advertisement for the source material. No Game No Life, Isekai Shokudo, Mondaiji, Densetsu no Yusha no Densetsu are just a handful of anime adaptations that will probably never receive another season, but still have ongoing light novel volumes, or even completed ones. When at all possible, I do try to read the source material for the media I like to consume, because that's going to be the closest to the author's original vision. At the same time, however, I want everyone to realize that just because an adaptation might change or cut some things, does not mean that the original work is always going to be superior to the adaptations. While adaptations will cut things out for certain, they also might add to it as well. For example, I love Gintama, as I mentioned previously. Even though the manga by Subarashii Hideaki is the original material, I stick to watching the anime because I think the way that Sugita and the rest of the voice actors portray the cast of Gintama really brings life to the original manga. While the original manga is great, the anime does an overall fantastic job that makes the jokes even funnier and the action all that more intense. It all just really depends on the adaptation. Just like visual novels, a lot of light novel adaptations are pretty trashy because, as I joked before, a lot of them are made by terrible studios with the budget of a lemonade stand. On the other hand, there are some pretty fantastic adaptations as well, like Slime Tensei, No Game No Life, and Fate Zero, just to name a few. As I said in the beginning, every medium has their own strengths and weaknesses, and is entirely dependent on an adaptation by adaptation basis on whether one version of a story is superior to another. Anyhow, the reason why I want to talk about light novels in the first place is because I really want to start talking about them on this channel. I'm a pretty big fan of medium overall, and it is probably the predominant way I enjoy my time. I probably spend more time reading light novels than I do playing video games, watching anime, reading manga, reading visual novels, and anything else actually. Unlike all of that, which can feel like a commitment to finish, it's just so easy for me to pick up my phone and just start reading whenever I feel like it. Many of the longer viewers of the channel probably know I've been alluding to the fact that I plan on doing this for quite some time. I've always been a big proponent of introducing stories and games that I find super interesting that plenty of others probably have no idea about. It's why I started talking about visual novels in the first place, and I think light novels and web novels also have plenty of incredible stories that I want more people to hear about. Over the last 7 or so years, I've read so many light novels and web novels, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese, and granted I think a lot of them have been pretty whatever, but there are also several that have stood out to me that I would love to introduce to everyone here. Unlike with my visual novels, chances are nearly every single one I talk about will probably have an English translation of sorts, whether they'd be official translations or fan translations. The videos on light novels will probably be just shorter, casual look-ats that will come out during weekdays whenever I feel like it, and you'll probably start seeing them pop up every now and then. I have no idea if I plan on giving it a series name or anything, probably not, but I'll figure it out. If any of you are visual novel, anime, or manga fans and don't already read light novels, or even if you do, I hope you look forward to the ones I'm about to talk about. There are so many crazy unique stories out there, and I imagine you'll definitely find at least 1 or 2 that will catch your attention. Recently, there's been a massive influx of official companies like J Novel Club and 7 Seas Entertainment, and other groups who have been super big into translating a lot of Japanese light novels, so I feel like now's a pretty good time to get into it. If you want to share the reasons why you love light novels, or you've got any light novels you want me to talk about, feel free to share them in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoy the content, the like button is down there as always. Subscribe if you want to support the channel, notification bell, and all buttons to get notified when I drop that next light novel related video. And yeah, that'll be it for me. I'll see you later. Till next time.